Let's now create the Arco Hotel logo. As you can see, this logo is constructed out of three parts: red text, the first white outline, and then the second black outline. This tells us that the outline pen tool isn't enough. There are two ways to gain such an effect. The first is to create a white outline and then convert it into an object. The second way is to use the contour tool. Let's now try to make this logo. First, select the text tool and create Arco text. Choose a random font and change the fill color of this text to red. Now, duplicate this text. Let's first try to use the contour tool. Switch to contour tool, change the amount of steps to 2 and then back to 1. Now, change the contour placement to outside. Here, the weight of the contour is set to 2 mm. From the left palette, we can choose the first colour of the object. From the contour bar, we can choose the last colour of the object with the contour. Right now, we only have one colour step. When there are more steps, the effect will look like this. There will be smooth transition between the first and the last steps. Let's change the contour steps back to 1. Now separate both these objects. In other words, the contour and the text will become separate. When we use the break option, the text will be automatically converted into curves. Go to Arrange menu and click on Break Contour Group Apart. If there is more than one contour step, you should check if the Ungroup option is active. We had only one step, so the figures are completely separated. We can move each of these objects separately. Now set the outline colour for the yellow figure. To do that, select the yellow figure and click on black with the right mouse button. On the control bar, we can choose the weight of the outline. We can set either hairline or 0.1 mm. Well, it's best to choose the smallest number and not some preset. Change the outline weight to 0.1. So now we have two figures, the text figure and the yellow figure. All we need to do now is to just change the fill colour of the yellow figure to white. Select both objects, go to Arrange menu and click on Group. So this is how to create such a logo using the contour tool. Let's now try to achieve the same effect with outline only. Select the copied text, go to Outline Pen menu and click on Outline Pen. Change the outline width to 2 mm and click OK. As you can see, the outline is now placed on top of the text. Go to Outline Pen tool and click on Outline Pen. Activate the Behind Fill option and click OK. Well, let's make this outline even bigger. Go to Outline Pen tool menu and click on Outline Pen. Change the outline width to 4 mm and click OK. Let's move on. The break option doesn't work this time. When we use it, the word will break into separate letters. Instead, we need to use the Convert Outline to Object option. Go to Arrange menu and click on Convert Outline to Object. Click on the side to deselect. Now try to move the outline. As you can see, the text and the outline are now separate objects. Press Ctrl Z and select only the outline. Change the fill colour to yellow. Now click on the black colour with the right mouse button and change the outline colour. Let's now change the fill colour of this object back to white. So, we now know two ways in which we can create such an effect. The first technique was to use only outline, and the second one was to use the contour tool. Select these pair, go to Arrange menu and click on Group. The second way included only playing with the outline options. We created the outline and then converted it into an object. Let's downscale this text and move it to the right. We also learned how to change the placement of the outline, how to place it over or under the figure. Press Shift and F4 to fit the page on the screen. We'll now talk about these two elements. colourful cards which contain some more information. Switch to the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. When we create such a figure, it's best not to rotate it immediately after its creation. We already know how to change the corners. Choose round corners and change the value to 10mm. Well, let's change it to 5mm. Select the rectangle and change its fill colour to grey. Switch to the ellipse tool, hold Ctrl and draw a small circle. Let's now select both these figures. Let's now try to combine these figures. Combine merges two objects into one and deletes their overlapping part. This means that the small circle will cut a hole inside the rectangle. Before we do that, let's duplicate the figure. Now select the copied pair and click on Combine. The effect is good, but something is missing. After using the Combine option, our figure was converted into curves. This means that we can no longer edit the size and the shape of the rectangle corners. Go to Range menu and click on Break Curve Apart. Select the circle and change its fill colour to yellow. Now select the rectangle. As you can see, we still can't change the rectangle's features. It was converted into curves. Press Ctrl Z twice to undo the changes. So when we're doing something like this, it's best to just make a backup copy of our figure. This way we'll have the original rectangle and be able to edit its corners. On the other hand, we could just group these objects and change the circle's fill colour to white. But then we wouldn't be able to see through this hole. Press Shift and F4. So we need to remember that both the Trim and Combine options will automatically convert our rectangle into curves. Saying that, it's best to duplicate this rectangle before we use one of these options. This way we'll always have it on the side and be able to change its corners. Let's move on. Switch to the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle inside this figure. Select both these figures and go to Align and Distribute docker and align them vertically and horizontally. Well, let's move the rectangle down. Select the inner figure and move it down. Select both figures. Well, before we group them, let's change the corners of the inner rectangle. Select the inner rectangle, change its corners type to round and set them to 1mm. We'll now import the photo and place it inside the inner rectangle. Go to File menu and click on Import. Select a random photo and click on Import. Place the photo, select it, drag it with the right mouse button and drop it over the inner rectangle. Select all these objects, go to Range menu and click on Group. Now we can duplicate this object and rotate it. So why are we rotating it now? Because it was easier for us to work on a nice straight figure. It's just more convenient to create a simple horizontal or vertical object and rotate it at the very end. The same rule applies to the card containing the text. Let's move on. Switch to the ellipse tool, hold Ctrl and draw a proportional circle. Place this circle like this and change its fill colour to white. We'll now duplicate this circle and downscale the copy. Select the figure and press the plus key on the numeric keypad. Hold Shift, downscale the copied figure and change its fill colour to grey. Select both these circles and duplicate them. We'll convert this inner circle into a power clip frame and insert a picture into it. Before we do that, however, let's talk about one more thing. Zoom in on the circle. As you can see, the circle goes outside the bleed limit and we need to cut it. Switch to the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. We'll use this rectangle to cut the circle. Go to View menu, then Snap to and click on Snap to Objects. Move the rectangle and place it like this. Hold Shift and add the grey circle to the selection. Go to the control bar and click on Trim icon. Select the rectangle, hold Shift and click on the white circle. Go to the control bar and click on the Trim icon. Of course, we should do such things at the very end of the work. It's best to just wait and see how the placement of the figures will change. Press Ctrl Z several times to undo the changes. Go to File menu and click on Import. Select a random photo and click Import. Place the photo inside the document. Upscale this a little bit. Of course, we could just leave these circles as they are. These figures will lose their symmetry after trimming. Select the photo, go to the Effects menu, then Power Clip, and click Place Inside Frame. Click on the grey circle and place the photo in it. Let's now downscale the white circle. Hold Shift and downscale the circle. It's easy and simple. Let's now place the rectangle right here. Add the circle to the selection and click on the trim icon. Let's select the white circle, hold Shift and upscale it. When we do such a thing, a non-proportional figure, we can encounter some problems with size and spacing. Well, in this case, it's not that visible. Press Ctrl Z. When it comes to non-symmetrical figures, problems with scaling them can make our work really difficult, so it's best to trim objects at the very end. Select the rectangle and delete it. Press Shift and F4 and fit the page to the screen. Select the text. We need to move it up. To do that, press Shift Page Up or go to Arrange, then Order and click on to the front of layer. Of course, we're moving this object inside only one layer. We can't change the order of the objects placed on several different layers. Let's move on and create decorations. Don't worry, it won't be difficult. First, we need to create a simple rectangle. Switch the Rectangle tool and zoom in. Both Snap to Guidelines and Snap to Objects options are active, so we shouldn't have any problems in creating this rectangle. Place your cursor at the corner of the photo and then draw a rectangle. Well, let's set some fill colour to the object. This way it'll be more visible. Select the rectangle, change its fill colour to grey and set its outline to none. We can also switch to wireframe view. Go to View menu and click on Wireframe. Go to Arrange menu and click on Convert to Curves. Switch to Shape tool. Select the bottom right node and delete it. Select this line segment, go to the control bar and click on Convert to Curve icon. Use the direction lines to modify this segment. Let's now create a contour for the object. Select this object and switch to Contour tool. Go to the control bar and change the amount of contour steps to 3. Now, set the contour offset to 2.5 mm. This way we've just created 3 new objects, each one moved by 2.5 mm. Well, let's change the contour offset to 3 mm. As you can see, each time we click this little arrow, the offset value changes by 0.5 mm. Of course, we can also input our own value. Change the contour offset to 2.3 mm and press Enter. Well, I think that 3 mm was best. Change the contour offset back to 3. Go to Arrange menu and click on Break Contour Group Apart. Then go to Arrange menu again and click on Ungroup. Switch to Pick tool and click on the side to deselect. We now have 3 new separate objects. We'll now place all these objects in the corner of the flyer. There are 2 ways to do that. First is to just drag the objects and let the Snap to Objects option do its thing. Another way is to use the Align Objects. Zoom out and select all of these elements. Go to the control bar and activate the Align and Distribute docker. Now go to Align and Distribute docker and click on Align Left and Align Top icons. As you can see, all objects were moved. We don't want that to happen. Press Ctrl Z to undo the changes. As you remember, when it comes to alignment process, the order of selecting objects is crucial. First, select the 2 bigger objects. Now hold Shift and add the other 2 objects to the selection. Well, it's slightly difficult to do this in wireframe mode. Go to View menu and click on Normal. Select these 2 bigger figures first. Hold Shift and add the other figures to the selection. Make sure that the smallest object is the last you select. Go to Align and Distribute docker and click on Align Left and Align Top icons. Well, let's correct this last element. Go to View menu and click on Wireframe. Switch to the Move tool, select this node and delete it. Delete the corresponding nodes in all other figures. Well, It just happens, when we use these tools, they may automatically create some unwanted nodes. Go to View menu and click on Normal. You can now change the fill colour of these elements and figures separately. Well, let's select the biggest figure and delete it. Select the smallest figure and change its fill colour to red. Now select the biggest figure and change its fill colour to orange. Select the biggest figure and switch to transparency. Draw a transparency line from left to right. Go to the control bar and change the transparency type to uniform. Now change the opacity to 30%. Let's make it bigger than that. Change the opacity to 70%. Press enter. Select the yellow figure and draw a transparency line from left to right. Change the transparency type to uniform. Let's leave the opacity at 50%. So that's how we can create decorations for the flyer. Press Shift and F4 to fit the page on the screen. We can use the same technique to create decorations on the other side of the flyer. Switch to Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. Zoom in on this corner. Well, let's try something different. We won't use the Contour tool now. Select the rectangle and set its stroke to none. Switch to Shape tool, select the bottom right node and delete it. Select this line segment and convert it to a curve. Use direction lines to change the shape of the line segment. Change the fill colour of the figure to yellow. Press the plus key on the numeric keyboard and duplicate this figure. Upscale the copied object. If you can't select the figure underneath, just hold Alt and click on it. We'll now move this figure on top. Go to Arrange menu, then Order, then click on to Front of Layer. Change the fill colour of this figure to red. Select the yellow figure and press the plus key on the numeric keypad to duplicate it. Upscale the copied figure. The only downside of this technique is that the duplicated figures appear on the top of the original ones. Hold Alt and click on the original yellow figure. Go to Arrange menu, then Order and click on to Front of Layer. Let's now change the fill colour of the figure to a random colour. Select the yellow figure, switch to Transparency tool and draw a transparency line. Go to the control bar and change the transparency type to uniform. Change the opacity to 70%. Select the purple figure, draw a transparency line and change the transparency type to uniform. Of course, we can still change the fill colour of each of these figures. We'll change the colour of this figure to yellow. Press Shift and F4 to fit the page on the screen. You can also select all these other objects and scale them together. Press Ctrl S to save the changes to the project. Before we finish, let's talk about one more thing. Look at the bottom of the flyer and locate the first fold mark. The guidelines on the left and the right are margins for the segments of the flyer. Saying that, we should avoid placing important elements like the logo on the margin. Go to the View menu and click on Wireframe. We treat this space right here as a margin. This shouldn't contain any important objects. As you can see, these decorations are too big. Select them all and downscale them. The other way would be just to make them so big that they'll go on to the next segment. Press Ctrl Z. So please remember about margins when you create flyers or folders. These two elements also shouldn't overlap with the margin area. So these two guidelines show us where the margins are, and the guideline between them marks the folding of the flyer. Go to the View menu and click on Normal. Press Ctrl and S to save the changes to the file.